This is going to be a video about how to roll Banshee gear in 2023. But before we start crafting or even talking about Banshee, there's a couple important notes that I need to mention first. First and foremost, if you're rolling for Banshee gear that doesn't give stat like lifesteal or counter, they're going to be much more difficult to roll and get good pieces of. Counter is especially hard because not only can you justify or argue or cope to yourself that certain characters should be on counter, you have to deal with the fact that unlike destruction, speed, hit set, any other sets, you just get no stat. And ultimately, even if you have a good counter piece, there's a chance that you just don't proc counter and then you've just wasted all your potential stat or like the potential 60% stat that you would have gotten from either running destruction or the additional speed from running speed set. Now, if we move along to the other sets, we do have destruction, which is technically a stat increasing set. And this gear is best for characters who don't need a lifesteal or they already have an artifact built in or some sort of aspect of their kit that already has lifesteal built in. And assuming that they don't need to be very fast, so under or around like 200-ish, 180-ish speed, you can just slap this set on and you get an insane amount of value because you get more stat, you get more health, more defense, more attack, whatever you want to call or compensate for. And it is arguably one of the best sets in the game right now. On the other hand, the other stat set that you can get from Banshee involves resist set, but a common misconception about resist set is that although it may be nice for content like Rift or if you're trying to do PvE, when you're trying to gear up characters for PvP, nowadays most characters actually just want the effect resistance or want really high effect resistance, but instead of having a resistance set, they just want immunity set. Characters like Flan can easily defense break you, so sometimes having the immunity icon is really nice, and it prevents you from not only getting debuffed, but also in tandem with high effect resistance, prevents you from being stripped and then defense broken right after. Okay, if we talk about the rolling process or after you start crafting gear, it's important to think about a couple of characters or the kind of characters that you're trying to roll gear for and not force these pieces into existence, but keep an eye out for them while you are going through all your materials. If you have a damage dealer, you ideally want the trifecta of crit chance, crit damage, attack, and you would probably mod out the HP here for speed. If you are a bruiser or a more tanky kind of knight that somehow also does damage, thank you Smilegate by the way for that, you can look for pairings like crit damage, health, speed, and defense, or some combination of that. On the other hand, if you are looking to build your soul weavers, you can always invest in something like resistance, HP, defense, and speed. But while the pairings of stats on gear is really important, what's actually really important when it comes to the stats of gear is the base rules. Now, what I mean by this is that for non-stat gear, so in other words, a piece like this for counter, you should be looking for decently high starting equipment score, ideally 28 to 30 minimum in order to begin rolling. PSA, if it's the perfect piece and you just need this one, maybe slightly lower gear score piece, but it puts together like a perfect unit and you could use them, then by all means, don't let me stop you. Go ahead and invest in the piece of gear or upgrade the piece of gear. However, mathematically speaking, you know, you can tilt up your glasses for a moment. 60% stat that you get from destruction or the 20% or 25% speed that you get from speed is just not present if you're using a set like lifesteal or counter. So keep that in mind when you're rolling for gear. For statted gear or the destruction and the resistance sets, you can ideally look for 27 plus, but just remember that in general, gear wants to be highly rolled. And instead of trying to start low and then equalize that by having a set of gear that gives you more stat, what you can do is enhance highly statted gear to begin with, and then pair that with a set like destruction, and suddenly you have some really ridiculous looking characters that are kind of almost impossible to create without just having destruction set. Characters like Spectre Tenebria or Navy Captain on a crit chance neck are great prime examples of this. If you try to build these characters on destruction set, or if you end up giving them a set that gives them stat as opposed to counter or lifesteal or something like that, they will look much different, especially when you pair it with the value of crit chance necks. I just realized you couldn't see the equipment score, but this is the equipment score that I was talking about. This is 27. However, while you may want a starting equipment score of 27, keep in mind, however, that what you're looking for at the end of the day is to kind of end at least in that 93, 94, 95 equipment score after reforge for your piece of gear. In terms of guidelines, if you keep that in mind, your units will look way better, have way more stat, and you won't be so gear gapped the next time that you fight in RTA. Now, in terms of when you approach the actual enhancing menu and what you should do when it comes to enhancing or when you should stop, ideally you should be looking for at least an above average roll on one of your two rolls when you get to +6. Alternatively, if it looks like everything is rolling into one stat, even in this case, if it was a 6 and a 5 but it all rolled into HP, if something has the potential to all roll into one stat, that usually ends up meaning that you'll end up with something like 30-40% stat, and that in and of itself is already really valuable, so that would make it worth keeping. However, if you end end up rolling really low, like +3 crit chance, +4 HP, maybe it's time to stop. I do this for all my guides, and I just want to make a PSA that when it comes to speed, it's kind of up to you. Ultimately, I don't really like rolling speed on Banshee set just because I have plenty of like weird, wacky offset pieces. I don't really need another counter or lifesteal like 19 speed piece that I can't use for anything else. Obviously, if there's crit chance, crit damage, there's maybe a fringe case where you could use it on someone like Spirit Eye Celine, but in most cases, rolling speed on Banshee set can sometimes feel really bad, and ultimately you have to remember that unless if you have at least 4 pieces of speed, you aren't even able to really go fast with your gear. And then you have the issue of if you're going to be using it as a broken set, is it really worth it to lose out on potentially immunity or penetration set or hit set or resistance set, anything like that? The answer 99% of the time is no. And unless if you really are desperate for like a right side piece, you can maybe justify upgrading red epic gear on right side pieces, because in all honesty, that does make a little bit more sense given how difficult it is to roll accessories as opposed to left side gear. That being said, that's just a bit of a tangent. I'm not really gonna judge or like police you that much on how you want to roll speed. Do what you like. I personally don't roll it that much. Now, when it comes to purples, there is something that you should keep in mind, which is that you are pretty much exclusively locked in Banshee to rolling speed checks on resistance set, because like I mentioned, you can't really use destruction, you can't really use any of these other stats for specifically speed units without either feeling bad because you would not have like a fully completed set, or you would have to use it on a really weird character. But speed rolls aside, you may encounter a piece like this, which looks like it's pretty decently high rolled. You've got 7 crit damage, you've got 8 defense, and you've almost got a perfect roll of speed. And if it wasn't on resistance set, and you may ask, Connor, is it worth it to roll for a piece like this, even if it doesn't have speed? And the answer is probably no. Now, here's the thing. If this is on lifesteal or if this is on counter, you have to keep in mind that you're already down in stat. So even if you do have a max roll, it will end up feeling bad unless and only unless it rolls absolutely perfect and you don't have a replacement for it. But a lot of characters, especially like Remnant Violet or Aiden and stuff like that, if you're trying to use them on lifesteal set, you need them to be really extremely high gear score to make them work very well. Otherwise, you're gonna have a montage of your Aiden or your Remnant Violet getting one-shot by things that just aren't supposed to one-shot them. That being said though, both of them can just get hit and die, so it is what it is. So long story short, you really shouldn't be rolling for purples on Banshee set, just because again, even from like a speed point of view, sure, if you want to do it on resistance set, that's fine. You may end up using a Soul Weaver that needs this in the future, like a mid, but for 99% of cases, I would highly recommend you don't do it. You also kind of burn through Banshee mats really fast, and you might just not have enough gold or resources to upgrade gear. So keep that in mind when you're rolling for it. I personally would not roll that much purple gear unless if it's speed checks. Do what you would like though. And finally, I just want to do a couple rolls here. Logged onto a viewer's account to do this because I have no Banshee mats personally, but I figured if I was going to craft a little bit and help him out, I might as well also make a video out of it. If you're interested in stuff like this, by the way, make sure to join the Discord. But let's do a couple rolls. So based off of what I just mentioned, nothing here is really savable. Again, if you really want to speed check, you can, just not really my space. So we're going to sell. What we're really looking for is an epic piece, and as you can see here, we have our first, and given that it has speed and it's on resistance set, we're going to give it a try. And even if it doesn't end up working, it is resistance set, it does have HP and crit chance at a max. So in terms of hitting the 28 threshold that we mentioned before, or the 27 threshold, because it's a stat giving set, we're good to go. Nothing else is worthwhile again though, so just sell it. What we're looking for ideally is either everything into speed or high rolls or decent rolls into HP and crit chance. Here we go. And so we do have one unfortunate roll into HP. However, if we're going to be using it for Rebellion, this looks kind of nice. These are all decent rolls. Okay, so we didn't end up getting exactly what we wanted here. However, again, it is a lot of HP rolls. We've got decent crit chance rolls. And if we just mod out the speed, or if we end up changing the speed to either for speed or to crit damage, you can argue that a piece like this can be useful on a character that wants effect resistance. Although I understand this is not the perfect example, it is a bit more of a fringe case. If you want to use this on a character like Bellion, you can. Otherwise, no harm, no foul. You can sell it for charms. I understand. Small PSA though, the guy did ask for a counter Bellion, which is why I kept the piece. Okay, so now we're going to do an epic craft, and I do have, I guess, one free, and we're going to try it on lifesteal set. And this is the perfect example of a piece of gear that you are kind of looking for, especially when it comes to the difficult to build characters like Arya. So as you can see here, we have the lifesteal set, we have crit chance, we have HP, we have defense, and we also have effect resistance. Now, mind you, if this was any lower, like 4 HP, 3 crit chance, 4 defense, this would be really difficult to justify rolling, but we've got above 30. We're in that 31 range, so not bad. Take it to +6, see how it does. And we got a max roll, or technically one max roll, and we also got a near max roll on the second. Great, we're going to keep rolling. Our next roll is a little bit low, but we do have 3 generally high rolls, so we're going to take it to plus 12. Plus 12 hurts a little bit more, but again, it's kind of up to you whether or not you have enough gear. If you have enough pieces like this and you know that your Arya gear looks good enough, then you can just throw it away. But like I said, the account that I'm on, I've seen some of its gear. It needs a little bit of love. We're going to plus 15 it. And of course, we can be saved, but we didn't get saved. Unfortunately, we didn't end up getting extremely high rolls, but of course, whether or not we actually keep this piece and whether or not you should keep pieces like this just depends on yourself. Anyways, guys, that was my guide for rolling Banshee gear. I hope you learned something or you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to like, comment, turn on the notification bell, subscribe. Let me know what you think about Banshee gear and Banshee, and if you're still hunting for Banshee, if you're just in Rift, let me know. Anyways, that's gonna be it. Make sure to check out the rest of my platforms. I'll see you guys all in the next one, though. Adios.